My name is Lauren Whitaker, and I'm 34. 3 weeks ago, my mother sold my grandmother's wedding ring and told me, "Memories don't pay rent." She folded the receipt into her purse like she had returned a lamp. She did not ask me once. That ring had been on my hand since I was 19. I did not raise my voice. I set the empty ring box on the coffee table and let her keep talking. But here's what my mother didn't know. My grandmother had written one sentence about that ring before she died. That is why I'm sitting here telling you this. If someone in your family ever sold what the dead left you and called it practical, please stay, like, and subscribe. Let me take you back to the summer my grandmother first put that ring in my palm. The summer my grandmother first put that ring in my palm, I was standing at her sink with dish soap up to my wrists. I was 13. My mother had sent me over after school with a grocery bag and a list, because Grandma Ruth had arthritis in both hands, and my mother said I was old enough to be useful. Grandma Ruth lived 6 blocks from us in a brick ranch house with 2 maple trees out front. My mother, Denise, worked the front desk at a dental office. People at church called her organized. At home, organized meant she knew exactly which burden could be handed to me before anyone else noticed it was heavy. My father died when I was 9. After that, the house shifted without anyone naming it. My mother still signed the checks and answered the phone, but if my younger cousins needed watching, she looked at me. If someone forgot a casserole, she looked at me. If Grandma Ruth needed her prescription picked up before the pharmacy closed, she looked at me with that tired little smile and said, "You're the practical one." In my mother's house, being dependable meant being available for whatever everyone else refused to carry. Back then, I only knew the smaller facts. My backpack stayed by the washing machine because homework came after laundry. The electric bill sat on the counter until I brought home cash from babysitting. Every family emergency somehow arrived with my name already written on it. The first time I missed something that mattered to me, it was a winter formal. I had a blue dress borrowed from a neighbor, 2 hours before I was supposed to leave. My mother came into the bathroom and said my aunt's sitter had canceled. She did not ask. She held out the diaper bag and said, "Just this once." It was never just once. I spent that night in my aunt's living room with 2 toddlers and a bowl of animal crackers. My dress hung from the bathroom door. When my mother picked me up after midnight, she said, "See? That's why I can count on you." It sounded like praise. It landed like a lock. The second time was the electric bill. I was 16 and working weekends at a bakery. One Friday, I came home and found the shut-off notice under a refrigerator magnet. My mother tapped it with one fingernail and said she had been juggling a lot. Then she looked at the hallway, not at me. I put $68 on the table. She took it quickly. She said, "You're the practical one." Grandma Ruth saw more than people thought. She was not loud about it. When I came to her house with tired eyes, she did not ask me to explain my mother. She handed me a towel and said, "Dry the plates first, then sit down." In her house, nothing floated loose. Bills went in a blue tin. Birthday cards went in a shoebox. Every promise had a witness. One Saturday, when I was 19, Grandma Ruth asked me to help her sort the top drawer of her dresser. Her fingers had stiffened, and she had started dropping small things. I sat on the edge of her bed as she lifted out scarf pins, old receipts, a stopped watch, and a small green velvet box. She opened the box herself. Inside was her wedding ring, plain gold, thin from years of work. It did not look expensive. It looked worn in the way a kitchen step looks worn, from being trusted every day. "This is not for the family drawer," she said. I laughed a little because I did not know what else to do. "Grandma, I'm not getting married," she said. "I did not ask if you were." "Hold out your hand." I did. She placed the ring in my palm. It was warm from her fingers. Then she closed my hand around it with both of hers. "There are things people call sentimental when they want permission to take them," she said. "Do not give permission just because someone sounds tired." That was Ruth. She could make a sentence sound like she was labeling a jar of peaches, and somehow it stayed with you for 15 years. I wore the ring on my right hand. Not every day at first, then more often. By the time I moved into my first apartment, I wore it whenever I needed to remember that someone in my family had given me something without asking for labor back. My mother noticed it once while I was helping her fold napkins for a baby shower. She picked up my hand and turned it toward the kitchen light. "Mom gave you that?" she asked. I said yes. Her mouth did a small thing. Not quite a smile. Not quite a frown. Well, she said, just keep it safe. Then she handed me another stack of napkins. Years passed. I got an office job at a local insurance agency. It paid on time. I learned to read forms carefully because a wrong box could cost someone a claim. My mother called it paperwork. Grandma Ruth called it knowing where the truth is sitting. That mattered later. When Grandma Ruth got weaker, my mother became busy in a way that made everyone else busier too. She asked me to drive Ruth on Tuesdays, pick up pills on Thursdays, and sit with her on Sunday afternoons so my mother could catch her breath. I did it because I loved Ruth. That part was clean. The dirty part was how my mother wrapped her own absence in my loyalty and called the whole package family. Ruth knew. One Sunday, I found her at the kitchen table with 3 envelopes in front of her. Her handwriting had grown shaky. She slid one envelope into a larger brown packet and tapped it twice. "If anything gets confusing," she said, "you let the paper speak." I asked if she wanted me to read it. "Not yet," she said, so I did not. That was one thing Ruth and I had between us. If she said not yet, I believed there would be a right time. She died in March, on a wet morning that made the whole town smell like thawing dirt. My mother called me before sunrise. Her voice was flat in the way people sound when they have already used up their real grief somewhere private. "She's gone," she said. Then, after one breath, "I need you to come over. There are things to sort." I went. Ruth's mug was in the sink. Her blue tin sat on the counter. My mother was already at the dining table with a legal pad, writing names beside objects. She had made columns, jewelry, furniture, kitchen, house. I stood in the doorway with my coat still on. My mother looked up and said, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I had not said anything. That afternoon, she talked about the lake cottage before she talked about the funeral program. Ruth had owned a small cedar-sided place 2 counties over. Years earlier, Ruth had written that the person who handled her personal property properly would also handle the cottage sale and receive the family representative distribution tied to that work. A realtor had already told my mother that between that distribution and her expected share, the amount could come to about $186,000 after the sale. My mother did not have the money yet. She had already begun spending it in her head. She said the number twice. The first time, she said it softly, like a prayer. The second time, she said it into the phone in the hallway, where she thought I could not hear. "It would finally give me some breathing room," she told someone. After everything I did for Mom. I looked at Ruth's mug in the sink. It still had a line of coffee in the bottom. The funeral came and went. My mother performed grief neatly. She chose navy. She hugged people with both arms. She told everyone Ruth had been the heart of the family, then sent me to refill the coffee urn. After the burial, my mother gathered us in Ruth's living room and talked about the will reading. She wanted it at the house. She said Ruth would have preferred family around her own furniture. That sounded tender if you did not know my mother. I knew she wanted the room because a room full of relatives made it harder for anyone to question her. 2 days later, I went back to Ruth's house alone. I told myself I was there for the mail. Really, I wanted the quiet. I walked through the rooms once. Then I opened the dresser drawer where Ruth had kept the green velvet box. The box was gone. For a minute, I did nothing. I checked the drawer below it, under the scarves, and the closet shelf. Then I heard Ruth's voice in my head, calm as a label on a jar. "Dry the plates first, then sit down." So I sat on the edge of the bed and made myself think in order. The ring had been on my hand at Christmas. It had been on my hand the week before Ruth died, when she squeezed my fingers and said the ring looked like it had found its person. I had taken it off only once after that, the night before the funeral, because I was washing dishes at my mother's house and the soap made it loose. I had put it in the green velvet box. I had set the box in Ruth's dresser for safekeeping until after the funeral. Only 3 people had keys to that house. Ruth had been gone. I had mine. My mother had hers. I did not call my mother from Ruth's bedroom. I did not accuse her into a phone. I went downstairs and checked the trash in the kitchen, then the paper bag beside my mother's legal pad. At the bottom, under a grocery receipt and a torn envelope, I found a small yellow slip from a pawn shop on Market Street. One line said gold band. One line said paid cash. The date was the day after Ruth died. That was the first time I understood what my mother meant by practical. She did not mean steady. She meant useful after everyone else had taken what they wanted. I folded the slip once and put it in my wallet. Then I found the green velvet box in a drawer by the front door, empty. My mother had not even thrown it away. She had kept the shell and sold the thing Ruth had touched. I took the box home. That night, my mother called to remind me about the will reading. Her voice was brisk. She said the lawyer would come Friday at 2. She said my Aunt Paula might be there. She said I should not bring that mood into Ruth's house. I asked, "What mood?" She said, "The one where you act like you're the only person who lost something." I looked at the empty ring box on my kitchen table and said, "I'll be there." After we hung up, I did not cry. Not then. I made coffee. I did not drink. I opened a notebook from work and wrote 3 things down: the date Ruth died, the date on the pawn slip, and the name of the lawyer on the envelope my grandmother had tapped with 2 bent fingers. Then I wrote one more line under them. Let the paper speak. The next morning, I went to work with the pawn slip in my wallet and the empty green box in my purse. I sat at my desk at 8:15, before the phone started, and opened a blank claim folder. That was the habit my job had given me. When something looked messy, I gave it a place to sit. I wrote my grandmother's name on the tab. Ruth Whitaker. Then I wrote the date she died, the date on the pawn slip, and the name of the shop on Market Street. I did not write my mother's name at the top. Not yet. I wanted facts before I gave my anger a chair. At 9, I called the pawn shop. My voice sounded almost too calm, even to me. I said I had found a ticket for a family item and needed to know whether the item could be bought back. The man on the phone asked for the ticket number. I read it to him. He paused, then said, "Gold band." I said yes. He said, "Already moved out." I put my pen down and asked where. He said, "To our buyer. Scrap lot. We don't have it in the case." That was the first new fact. The ring was not sitting somewhere behind glass, waiting for me to pay my mother's cruelty back with interest. It had already been sent away by weight. Plain gold. Thin from years of work. Reduced to a line in a batch. I asked if he could give me a copy of the receipt. He said he could not release it over the phone. Then I said I had the original ticket and could come in person on my lunch break. He told me to bring ID. At noon, I drove to Market Street and parked in front of a laundromat with 3 broken dryers. The pawn shop had a bell on the door that sounded too cheerful for the business inside. I handed over the ticket. The man behind the counter looked at my license, looked at the slip, and printed a duplicate receipt. My mother's signature was at the bottom. Denise Whitaker. Not shaky, not rushed. Full first name, full last name. A neat little loop on the W. She had stood under fluorescent lights the day after her mother died and signed away a ring my grandmother had placed in my palm. I folded the duplicate once. I put it behind the original. Then I asked one more question. How much did she get? He looked at the screen and said, $240. For a moment, I heard the dryers thumping next door. $240. That was what my grandmother's hand had weighed to my mother. I did not argue with the man. He had not sold my grandmother. He had only printed the paper that showed who had. Back at work, I called the lawyer's office. His name was Mr. Callahan, and I had met him twice in my life. Once when Ruth updated her will after my grandfather died, and once when she signed paperwork after her hip surgery. He had the voice of a man who had spent 40 years asking families to sit down before they made things worse. His assistant put me through after I said Ruth's name. I kept my notes in front of me and said, "Mr. Callahan, I need to ask whether my grandmother left any written instructions about personal items." He did not answer quickly. That told me something. People answer quickly when the answer is no. Finally, he said, "There is a sealed letter to be opened with the will." I closed my eyes and said, "I'm not asking you to tell me what it says." He said, "I understand." I said, "I'm asking if I should bring anything to the reading." Another pause. Then he said, "If there is an item in question, bring whatever shows its history." That was all. No promise. No explanation. No hint about how the letter would land. Just a narrow path laid across the floor. I knew how to walk narrow paths. My mother had trained me for that without meaning to. I wrote his exact words in my notebook. Then I underlined item and history. That afternoon, Denise called me while I was still at my desk. I let it ring once before I answered. "Lauren," she said. I need you to stop making phone calls. I looked at the duplicate receipt beside my keyboard and asked, which phone calls? She said, you know exactly what I mean. I did not say anything. She exhaled into the phone. You always do this. You get one idea in your head and suddenly everyone has to tiptoe around your feelings. I said, my feelings are not on the receipt. There was a sharp little silence. Then she laughed once. Not because anything was funny, because she needed to put me back below her before the room tilted. Oh, Lauren, she said, you're the practical one. Don't start acting precious now. There it was again, the family label. The one that sounded like a compliment until you noticed it only came out when someone wanted you to swallow something. I said, I'll see you Friday. She said, don't embarrass me. I looked at the signed receipt and said, I'm bringing what I need to bring. After I hung up, I made 3 copies. One copy went into my work folder. One went into the side pocket of my purse. One went into the empty ring box, folded small under the velvet insert. That last one was not necessary. It was just true. The next 2 days showed me what my mother did when she felt a door closing. She decorated the door. She called my Aunt Paula and said I was struggling with grief. She called my cousin Beth and said I had become fixated on jewelry. She told another relative I was making Ruth's death about myself. Each version was soft enough to sound concerned. Each version put me in the same little chair. Emotional, difficult, not quite reliable. I heard about it because Beth texted me a heart emoji and the words, "Are you okay? Your mom said the ring thing is getting intense." I wrote back, "I am okay. Please come Friday if you can." Then I stopped explaining. Explanations given too early can turn into rope for the wrong person. On Thursday evening, I went to Ruth's house to pick up mail. Denise's car was in the driveway. Through the front window, I saw her at the dining table with a stack of real estate brochures. She had written numbers in the margins. One brochure had a photo of a beige condo near the lake. Another had a floor plan circled in blue ink. I knocked before I went in. That was new. It was still Ruth's house in my heart, but Denise had started standing in it like a person measuring curtains. She looked up from the table and said, "You don't have to knock." I said, "I do now." She did not like that. Her eyes moved to my purse, then back to my face. "I hope you're not planning some performance tomorrow," she said. I set the mail on the table and said, "I'm planning to listen to the will." She tapped the condo brochure with her pen. "Good. Because once the cottage sale closes, I can finally make some decisions for my own life. I am allowed that much, after taking care of Mom." There it was. The thing she was already holding in her mind. Not cash yet, but close enough to spend. $186,000 had become a condo. A new start. A story where Denise was the tired daughter who deserved reward, and I was the sentimental one blocking the sun. I looked at the blue circle around the condo floor plan and asked, "Did Grandma know you wanted to sell the cottage?" My mother said. She was practical too. No, I thought. Ruth was careful. Those are not the same thing. But I did not say it. I picked up 3 envelopes from the sideboard and put them in my tote. Then I noticed Aunt Paula's name on one of them. It was a sympathy card. Unopened, addressed in looping blue ink. I asked, "Paula's coming tomorrow?" Denise said, "If she doesn't make it dramatic." That meant yes. I saw Aunt Paula that night in the grocery store, of all places, standing by the canned peaches. She was Ruth's younger sister by 11 years, shorter than Ruth had been, with the same square hands. She looked tired in a way that did not perform for anyone. "Lauren," she said, touching my arm, "your mother said you're upset about a ring." I almost gave her the short answer. Then I saw her hand tighten on the cart handle. I said, "Ruth gave it to me when I was 19. Paula's face changed by a fraction. "She did?" I said yes. Paula said, "She never gave jewelry casually." I said, "I know." I reached into my purse and took out the green velvet box. I did not open the receipts. I did not tell her what I had learned from the lawyer. I only opened the lid. Paula looked at the empty groove in the velvet. Her thumb went to her own bare ring finger, then stopped. "Did Ruth change her mind?" she asked. I said no. That was the whole conversation. It did not need more. Paula closed the lid herself and handed the box back to me like it still had weight. The next morning, before the will reading, I put the original pawn slip, the duplicate receipt, and the empty box into my purse. I put my notebook beside them. I did not know what Ruth's sealed letter said, I did not know whether Mr. Callahan could do anything beyond read it out loud. But the balance had changed. My mother thought she was walking into a room where I would be the problem. I was walking into a room with the thing she had signed, the thing she had emptied, and the person who knew Ruth's hand. That did not make me powerful. It made me ready. By Friday at 1:30, Ruth's living room had stopped feeling like Ruth's living room. Denise had moved the armchair away from the window and put folding chairs in 2 rows. On the side table, beside Ruth's old lamp, she had stacked 3 real estate folders with blue tabs on top. The will reading was at 2. The closing packet for the lake cottage was due at the title office the next morning. That was the pressure my mother had built for herself. She wanted Ruth's words read. The family softened, the money path cleared, and no one asking why a ring had vanished between the death certificate and the funeral program. I arrived with my purse zipped shut. The green velvet box was inside. So were the 2 receipts. I did not touch them in the driveway. I only sat in my car for 10 seconds and looked at the front door. Then Aunt Paula pulled in behind me. She did not wave big. She just got out, walked to my car, and touched the roof once with her knuckles. It was not dramatic. It was enough. When I stepped out, she said, "I came because Ruth would have wanted me here." That was the first quiet mercy of the day. If you have ever had one person show up quietly when a whole room was being arranged against you, write the word witness in the comments. I am going back to the room now, because this is where my mother made the mistake she could not unmake. Inside, Denise was wearing pearl earrings I had seen Ruth wear at Easter. That hit me harder than I expected, but I kept my face still. Beth stood by the kitchen doorway, holding a paper cup she had not filled. Mr. Callahan sat at the dining table with a brown envelope and a black leather folder. Denise saw Paula beside me and her mouth tightened. "Well," she said. "We're all here," Paula said. "Not all." The room changed by half an inch. Denise pretended not to hear it. She turned to Mr. Callahan and smiled the smile she used at church when someone had taken her parking spot. "We don't need this to take long. Everyone knows Mom wanted things simple." Mr. Callahan nodded once. "I'll read what Ruth left," Denise said. "Of course. I also made an inventory, just to save everyone time." She slid a typed sheet across the table. Her name was at the bottom. Under jewelry, one line said miscellaneous personal pieces, handled by Denise Whitaker. Not Ruth's ring, not my name. Just a little broom of words sweeping the whole drawer into my mother's hands. She had made 6 copies, 1 for the lawyer, 1 for herself, and 4 for people she expected to nod. Mine had my name written in my mother's tidy dental office handwriting. Lauren. No last name. Family did not need last names when it was time to assign work or remove ownership. The page felt less like help and more like a verdict she had printed before court opened. Mr. Callahan did not pick it up. Denise tapped the sheet once. "I've had to be the adult here." I looked at the blue tabs on the real estate folders. Cottage sale. Closing estimate. Title office. She had brought her future into the room and set it beside Ruth's lamp. Then she looked at me. "And I hope we can keep personal emotions out of legal matters." There it was, the little stage set before the play. I was supposed to be personal emotions. She was supposed to be legal matters. I sat in the second row. Paula sat beside me. The empty box pressed against my purse lining. I could feel the corner of it against my knee. Mr. Callahan began with the ordinary things. Bank account. Household contents. The lake cottage. His voice was even. No music. No thunder. Just sentences Ruth had signed when her hands were still steady enough to leave a mark. When he reached the cottage, Denise leaned forward. I saw it. So did Paula. Mr. Callahan read that the cottage would be sold after the named gifts were accounted for, and that the family representative would receive the distribution Ruth had set aside for that work. Denise lowered her eyes in a way that tried to look humble. Her right hand moved to the real estate folder on the side table. Her fingers rested on the blue tab. $186,000 had a hand on it. Then Mr. Callahan paused. Denise did not like pauses. She filled them the way some people fill cracks in a wall. "Before we get pulled into sentimental items," she said, "I just want to say Mom trusted me to handle the practical side. She knew I understood reality." No one answered. Denise turned toward me then. That was her mistake. If she had let the lawyer read, the room might have met the truth sitting down. But she needed me small first. She gave a soft laugh. "Lauren has been upset about a ring. I understand grief does strange things. Beth looked at me. Paula's knee shifted beside mine. I kept my hands folded around the strap of my purse. Denise went on. But memories don't pay rent. She said it clearly. In Ruth's living room. In front of Ruth's sister. In front of the lawyer holding Ruth's envelope. That was the door closing behind her. I looked at Mr. Callahan. Before the personal items letter is read, may I place something on the table? Denise's smile held. Lauren, please don't turn this into a scene, I said. I'm not. My voice did not rise. That mattered. If I had sounded angry, my mother would have climbed inside that anger and lived there for the rest of the afternoon. I opened my purse. I took out the green velvet box. I did not open it yet. I placed it on the coffee table between the first row of chairs and the dining table. Denise looked at it for 1 second too long. Then she looked away. Mr. Callahan looked at the box, then at me. Is that the item in question? I said. It is the box. Denise said quickly. The ring is gone. There, not missing. Not misplaced. Gone. Mr. Callahan turned his head toward her. Gone where? Denise blinked. I mean, I don't know. Things get moved after a death. I waited. That was the part my mother had never understood about me. She mistook quiet for empty. Most of the time, quiet is where the record is being kept. Mr. Callahan did not ask the second question yet. He simply looked at the brown envelope, then back at the box. Denise's hand left the blue tab on the real estate folder. The clock on Ruth's mantel clicked twice. It was almost 2:20. In less than 24 hours, Denise expected to sit at a title office and sign papers that would turn Ruth's cottage into her condo deposit. She had already told half the family she deserved that relief. Now the whole plan was balanced on one small green box she had thought was harmless because it was empty. I leaned forward and opened the lid. The groove in the velvet showed where the ring had rested for years. The folded copy of the pawn receipt sat underneath, hidden by the lifted insert. I did not pull it out yet. I let the room see the absence first. Paula made a sound so small it barely reached the air. Denise heard it anyway. Really? My mother said. We're doing this now? I looked at her. You chose now. Her face changed then. Not fully, just enough. The church smile thinned. The tired daughter expression came up behind it, ready to work. Mom would hate this, she said. Paula said very softly. No. Ruth hated theft, dressed as common sense. That was the second quiet mercy of the day. Mr. Callahan picked up the brown envelope. Denise straightened. Wait, before you read anything, I think we need to remember that I handled everything for Mom. I handled the appointments, the calls, the house, all of it. I am not going to be treated like some criminal over a piece of jewelry. There was the trap, laid open. She wanted the room to vote on her effort before it looked at her action. She wanted care to cancel theft. She wanted exhaustion to erase a signature. I had lived inside that trick for most of my life. This time, I did not step into it. I reached into the box and took out the folded duplicate receipt. I kept it in my hand. Mr. Callahan, I said, when you're ready, please read my grandmother's letter. Denise's chair scraped back 1 inch. The sound was small. It was the first honest thing she had done all afternoon. Mr. Callahan opened the brown envelope with a letter opener Ruth had kept in her desk for 30 years. He did not rush. That was almost worse for my mother. Denise needed speed now. Speed made room for confusion. Slow paper has a way of finding the person who is lying. I kept the duplicate receipt folded between my fingers. The empty green box sat open on the coffee table. The groove in the velvet looked darker than the rest, like the box itself remembered pressure. Mr. Callahan pulled out one sheet. It was not typed. It was Ruth's handwriting. Aunt Paula's hand went to her chest. Beth lowered her paper cup without taking a drink. My mother looked first at the page, then at the real estate folders, as if she could still choose which future the room would look at. Mr. Callahan adjusted his glasses. This is a signed personal property note from Ruth Whitaker, dated 6 months before her death. Denise said, I don't remember that. He said, no, you would not have had it. That landed softly. It still landed. He read the first lines. Ruth had listed 3 items by name. A silver watch for Paula, a cedar chest for Beth, then the ring. Mr. Callahan read, My wedding band is a personal gift to my granddaughter, Lauren Whitaker, because she has already carried enough things that were not hers. No one moved. I did not look at my mother. I looked at the handwriting. The L in Lauren leaned forward. Ruth had always written my name like it was going somewhere. Paula made a small sound, not quite a cry. She pressed 2 fingers to her mouth. Beth set her cup on the windowsill and missed the coaster by half an inch. Mr. Callahan held the page steady, but his thumb had gone white against the paper. My mother's face did not collapse all at once. It lost its pieces in order. First, the church smile. Then the tired daughter. Then the practical woman who understood reality. Underneath all of that was a daughter who had sold her mother's ring for $240 and had just heard her mother name the person it belonged to. Denise reached for her purse. I can explain. Mr. Callahan looked at her. Before you do, I need to ask a simple question. She stopped with her hand on the clasp. Did Ruth give you permission to sell that ring? Denise opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked at Paula. Looked at me. Ruth was gone. Mr. Callahan said, "That is not an answer." Beth's fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. Mr. Callahan asked the second question. Was Lauren present when it was sold? Denise swallowed. The sound was small, but everyone heard it. She was being impossible about everything, my mother said. I unfolded the duplicate receipt and placed it beside the open box. Not toward Denise, toward the room. The signature showed at the bottom. Denise Whitaker. The date showed above it. The day after Ruth died. Paula stood up then. Not fast. Not dramatic. She took 1 step toward the table and bent over the handwritten note. Her finger hovered over Ruth's signature without touching it. That was her hand, Paula said. That was the blood in the room. Not the rule. Not the money. Ruth's hand. Ruth's name. Ruth's ring. Ruth saying, in front of every person my mother had tried to manage, that I had carried enough. My mother sat back as if the chair had moved away from her. I was under pressure, she said. I believed that. I did. Pressure was real. Bills were real. Grief was real. But pressure does not walk into a pawn shop, sign a full name, take cash, and then call the daughter who was robbed too emotional to attend a will reading. I said none of that. I only looked at Mr. Callahan. He turned the handwritten note over. There was a second paragraph. Short. Ruth had always liked short instructions. They left less room for people like my mother. Mr. Callahan read, "The person entrusted with my personal property and the representative distribution from the cottage sale must deliver all named gifts to the named people. Any person who sells, hides, or disposes of a named personal gift before it reaches the person named here is not to handle my personal property, my family records, or the cottage distribution connected to that role." Denise said, "That cannot be serious." Mr. Callahan placed the page flat on the table. "It is signed. It is witnessed. It is attached to the will." Then he closed the black leather folder in front of my mother. It was not loud. It was a soft clap of leather against paper. But every blue tab on the side table seemed to lose air at once. "Denise," he said, "you will not be acting as family representative for Ruth's personal property. You will not sign tomorrow's cottage paperwork on behalf of the estate. And the representative distribution you expected from that sale will be handled under Ruth's alternate instructions." My mother stared at him. "You are taking my inheritance over a ring?" he said. "No. Ruth gave instructions for what would happen if a named gift was taken. I am following them." Mr. Callahan reached for a small yellow form clipped inside his folder. He wrote the date across the top. Then he wrote my mother's name, under removed representative. He did it in block letters, slow enough for every person in that room to understand that this was not a family vote. Denise leaned forward. "Can we discuss this privately?" he said. "No." Ruth required notice to the beneficiaries present. He turned the form toward Paula and Beth. They signed as witnesses that the note had been opened in the room, and the receipt had been shown. Paula's hand trembled on the first letter. Beth had to take the pen twice because her fingers slipped. Neither of them looked at Denise. Then Mr. Callahan took a red sticky flag and placed it on the cottage folder. Hold, 1 word. 4 letters. It was the whole condo dream stopping on paper. Beth sat down without looking for the chair first. The chair legs bumped the floor. Paula turned away and wiped under one eye with her knuckle. Someone in the kitchen, one of my mother's cousins, whispered. The next day? Because the date on the receipt had finally reached her. The next day. That was the part no one could soften. Denise looked at me then. Really looked. Not as the practical one. Not as the girl who could be handed a diaper bag, a bill, a coffee urn, a grief she did not cause. She looked at me like a person who had just found the locked door inside a house she thought she owned. You did this, she said. I shook my head once. Grandma did. My mother's eyes dropped to the empty groove in the velvet. For 1 second, her face looked almost young. Not innocent. Just caught without the armor she had spent years polishing. Mr. Callahan gathered the inventory sheets Denise had printed. He did not crumple them. He did not make a show. He slid them into a plain folder and moved that folder away from her side of the table. That was the last small sound of the old order leaving the room. Denise reached toward the real estate folder. Mr. Callahan put one hand on top of it first. Not today, he said. No one argued. I picked up the green box and closed the lid. I did not pick up the receipt. I left it on the table, beside Ruth's letter, where it belonged. My mother whispered, "It was just a ring." Paula turned back so sharply her earrings moved. "No," she said. It was the one thing Ruth put in Lauren's hand. There are sentences that end a room. That one did. I stood. My knees were steady. That surprised me. I had imagined, in the private places of my mind, that a moment like this would shake me apart. It did not. It made me very still. I looked at my mother and said, "I'm going to step outside now." She waited for more. People like Denise always expect the speech. They expect the punishment to come dressed as noise, so they can call it cruelty and stop hearing it. I gave her nothing else. I walked to the porch with Ruth's empty ring box in my hand. Behind me, Mr. Callahan began explaining the next steps in that calm, legal voice. I did not need to hear every word. The blow had already landed. The room had seen the handwriting. The room had seen the receipt. The room had seen my mother understand both. I stayed on Ruth's porch for 8 minutes. I know because I watched the second hand on my phone move around the screen. Inside, voices rose and fell. Not screaming. Not even close. Just the low, broken sound of people having to rearrange what they thought they knew. The afternoon light hit the empty ring box in my palm. For the first time since I had found it in that drawer, it did not feel like proof of what was gone. It felt like proof that something had been witnessed. Mr. Callahan came out first. He closed the front door behind him and stood beside me without trying to make the moment smaller. "Lauren," he said, "Ruth's instructions are clear." I nodded. He told me the title office would be notified before 5. The cottage closing would not go forward with Denise signing as the family representative. The personal property distribution would be moved out of her hands. The representative distribution she had already built her condo plan around would be held and redirected the way Ruth had written. He said it gently. Still, each sentence had weight. By Monday morning, the beige condo near the lake was no longer pending under my mother's name. Beth saw the listing go back online and sent me a screenshot without comment. Denise returned the folder of cottage paperwork to Mr. Callahan's office in a white envelope. She did not come inside. She left it with the receptionist and walked back to her car with her sunglasses on, even though it was raining. That was how $186,000 became real. Not as a number. As a condo she could not buy. As a closing table she could not sit at. As a set of blue tabs that no longer opened when she put her hand on them. The rest came in ordinary pieces. The realtor stopped calling her and started calling Mr. Callahan. The cousin who had asked Denise about lake weekends stopped asking. The aunt who had always let Denise assign the holiday dishes sent a group text and asked everyone to sign up for themselves. It sounds small. It was not. My mother had lost more than money. She had lost the family habit of letting her stand at the center with a clipboard. A week later, Mr. Callahan mailed the revised notice. I saw my mother's name on the copy, no longer beside the word representative. It was just a name in a list. Denise Whitaker. No clipboard. No blue tab. No authority to turn Ruth's house into her personal reward before anyone else had finished grieving. Beth called me after she got her copy. She said, "I didn't know she sold it the next day." I said, "I know." She said, "I'm sorry I believed her." That apology was different. It did not ask me to erase anything. It just placed the truth where it belonged. I did not celebrate that. I need you to understand that. I had wanted the ring back. I had not wanted a courtroom in Ruth's living room. I had not wanted my mother to sit there with her name on a receipt and her mother's handwriting against her. But wanting less pain does not mean accepting a lie because the truth is uncomfortable. 2 weeks later, Denise called me on a Wednesday night. I was washing a coffee mug. The phone lit up on the counter, and for a second I was 13 again, waiting to be told where I was needed. I dried my hands before I answered. She did not say hello. She said, "I was under a lot of pressure." I said, "I know." She said, "I made a mistake." I said, "Yes." There was a pause. In the old days, I would have rushed to fill it. I would have given her a softer word. I would have handed her a way out and called it maturity. This time, I let the pause stay empty. "Finally," she said. "Are you really going to let this ruin our family?" I looked at the shelf above my sink. The green velvet box sat there now, closed. Beside it was Ruth's blue tin. Mr. Callahan had given it to me after the personal items were sorted. Inside were recipe cards, old stamps, and one folded grocery list in Ruth's handwriting. Nothing expensive. Everything touched. I said no. Selling the ring did that. I'm only refusing to pretend it didn't. She went quiet. Then she said, "I'm sorry." I believed she wanted the sentence to work. I believed she wanted it to open the old door, the one where I stepped back into place and made everyone comfortable. But an apology is not a key, unless the person holding it understands the lock. She asked if we could start fresh. That phrase used to sound generous to me. Now it sounded like someone wiping a counter before the spill had been cleaned from the floor. Starting fresh is not the same as starting honest. I said, "I'm willing to be civil. I'm not willing to be useful on command." She breathed in sharply. I did not add a speech. I did not list every winter formal, every bill, every coffee urn, every errand that had turned me into the family's quiet extra adult. Some inventories are for lawyers. Some are for your own heart. You do not owe every line to the person who benefited from them. The first month after that was awkward. Awkward is underrated. It is the sound a family makes when one person stops oiling the old machine. Denise sent me 3 messages about Sunday dinner. I answered the first with, "I'm not available." I answered the second with the same sentence. I did not answer the third because repetition is not a new question. When relatives called me for tasks that should have gone to my mother, I gave them her number and wished them luck. Not coldly, just clearly. The first time I did it, my hand shook. The 5th time, it did not. Peace can feel rude when you were raised to confuse need with love. Then it got ordinary. On Sunday mornings, I made coffee and read by the window. I bought a cheap wooden frame and put a copy of Ruth's note inside it. Not the whole thing, just the line with my name. "My wedding band is a personal gift to my granddaughter, Lauren Whitaker." I placed it above the shelf with the blue tin and the empty green box. The ring never came back. I will not soften that for you. Some things are gone because someone decided their want mattered more than your wound. But the box stayed. The blue tin stayed. The handwriting stayed. Aunt Paula came by in April with a paper bag of canned peaches, because she said Ruth would haunt her if she came empty-handed. We made coffee. We sat at my small kitchen table. She told me stories about Ruth as a girl, before marriage, before children, before everyone learned to call her steady, and then use that steadiness like a public utility. Paula told me Ruth once hid money in a flour can because her own mother had a habit of borrowing from daughters. I laughed before I meant to. Then I understood why Ruth had labeled everything, saved everything, written everything down. She had not been fussy. She had been protecting the people who came after her from the people who called taking a family trait. When Paula left, she touched the green box with 2 fingers. "She chose well," she said. That was the warmest thing anyone in my family had said to me in years. I kept it. Some boundaries do not give you back what was taken. They keep the thief from taking the rest of you. Real family is not the person who sells your memory and calls it rent. Real family is the person who notices what was placed in your hand and stands there when the room tries to say it was never yours. That's my story. A plain gold ring. An empty green box. A $240 receipt. A $186,000 dream stopped with 1 red flag. And 1 sentence in my grandmother's hand that gave my name back to me. If your family has ever called you practical when they really meant available, I hope you hear me clearly. You are allowed to stop being the safest place for other people's selfishness. You are allowed to let the paper speak, the truth stand, and the old role die without volunteering to bury it yourself. Share this with someone who needs that reminder. Tell me in the comments what your family had no right to take from you. And if you want more calm stories about truth, boundaries, and the moment a family lie finally runs out of room, subscribe before you go.